Hey, everybody out there in computer land. I I'm back. I've been kind of off for the last few days. I mean, like away from the computer. Been busy. Um, and meaning that I work graveyard shift, so sometimes it's kind of hard for me to get to the computer the way I need to. And one of the reasons I'm here a little bit less is I got back from vacation, and I need to get that workout taken care of every day. I stopped going to the gym when the COVID hit, and now that the gyms are open, I'm trying to force myself back into some kind of a decent habit, and so I won't look like the fat slob I look like currently. So that's pretty much it. So I'm going to still try to be online during the commentaries. However, one of the reasons why I'm not here quite as much this past week is I'm trying to force myself back into good habits. And but really, honestly, enough about me. I'm want to do a commentary, and I've been wanting to talk about this, and I feel like I want to do this because the elections is coming up, and this whole thing about Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and and we don't know how this thing's going to turn out. So and I'm not going to make any predictions right now. I will maybe to the extent that I think that Joe Biden's going to win. I think he's going to win. He's favored to win, but I guess kind of need to keep on guard. With Donald Trump is another dark period of right wing politics that's very disturbing. And with Joe Biden, it will be a symbolic relief that Donald Trump will no longer be president. But I don't expect anything from Joe Biden any more than any other Democratic presidents in the past. In my 51 years of living, I've lived through four Democratic presidents, um, and during the time I was old enough to vote and to see what the three out of the four Democratic presidents in my lifetime have done, I'm just not going to hold my breath with as I said, with Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. I just they not only hardly delivered, they actually the country moved further to the right because of Bill Clinton. The country moved further to the right because of Barack Obama. And I think it's going to, if Joe Biden wins, I think that he's going to deliver next to nothing for the progressives, while the right wing thinks he's going to be like the biggest Marxist that's ever occupied the White House. It's amazing. As the Democratic Party moved further and further to the right over the years, the Republicans said, "I've never seen the Democrats move so far to the left." I mean, I'm like, really? I mean, how in the hell can you say that? I mean, just it's ridiculous. I mean, and it's always, well, this is just the most radical group of Democrats I've ever seen in my life, and that's typical Republican minds speak and mindset that they have. Really, it's kind of annoying. But I don't want to sound like a partisan hack. But yeah, I mean, I can't bring myself to vote Republican. Just cannot support them in any way, shape, or form. I don't mean that I hate individuals who are Republican. That would be silly, be petty. I mean, if they're an asshole, I'm telling them to fuck off. But I mean, I've told Democrats who are assholes to me to fuck off too. I even know Social Democrats when I was in the Socialist Party USA that I didn't like. And that their politics were pretty decent. And they're not in the Socialist Party USA anymore. Neither am I. And still think this one person that was in the leadership of the Socialist Party USA, he's a big union guy now. He does good work, but his his disposition is that of an asshole, you know. But I wish him well in his pro union endeavors. But anyway, as I said, I don't want to come out here talking like a partisan hack. Blue team good, uh, red team evil. I hate that mindset. I mean, considering how sorry and that most Democrats are to vote for, and the Republicans are always, almost always worse. But there's nothing to be excited about when it comes to voting for Democrats. And I kind of resent that with Biden being the nominee, that I have to be excited by that. I have to be excited by Joe Biden. I have to be excited by Kamala Harris. No, I was excited in the primaries because there were actually some decent candidates, mostly Bernie Sanders, and and there was a couple of others that were decent, and that they were pretty decent to support. Just as I said, Bernie Sanders was my number one choice, my super number one choice, my profound number one choice. And I'm prepared to vote for Bernie Sanders again and support Bernie Sanders again in 2024 if he decides to run again in 2024. So and he was my number one choice in the 2020 primaries. And I'm going to get a lot of shit for saying this by virtually all corporate Democrats, and half of the progressives out there usually give me shit for this. My second choice was Tulsi Gabbard, and I think Tulsi Gabbard is one of the most misunderstood politicians in the United States today, and they're trying to write her off like she's some kind of right winger. What I don't understand when it comes to even some of the progressives that hate Tulsi Gabbard, it's like, you're going to hate Tulsi Gabbard, but you're going to give Debbie Wasserman Schultz a free pass and Hillary Clinton, of all people, a free pass? Please. But anyway, I like Andrew Yang. I like Andrew Yang for the obvious reasons. The UBI is very forward thinking, and I think that's a movement that's going to pick up steam down the road. Um, I like Marianne Williamson. She did the right thing. She endorsed Bernie Sanders when she dropped out. She did the right thing. Unlike Andrew Yang, unlike Tulsi Gabbard, and unlike Elizabeth Warren. Now, Elizabeth Warren, of all the candidates I just mentioned, she might be, in my opinion, the one I like the least, because she basically stabbed Bernie in the back in 2016, and she backstabbed Bernie again in 2020, and she waffled on Medicare for all. So she's kind of turned into a cliche establishment Democrat by now. But I would have been a little more enthusiastic supporting her than, let's say, Joe Biden. But I don't want to sound like a hack, but I do need to stress the reason I don't vote Republican. Now, have I ever voted Republican? I voted for one Republican for a local office once, and that was because my grandmother, when she was alive, was very good friends with this person, and he's a friend of the family. And so I didn't mind voting for this person. It was a small office, and even as a Republican, I don't think there's any damage to that particular office. It was registered of deeds, I believe it was. And so that was the one time I voted Republican in my entire life. Other than that, I had pretty much voted for majority Democrats and try to go as far as independent as much as I can. So, I mean, I have voted for the Socialist Party USA. I have voted for the Green Party. I even voted once for the Libertarians for president. And I have to do my homework with Libertarians if there's a Senate race or congressional seat or what have you. And if the Libertarian, I hate their economics, but if they're good on issues like the drug war, and they're opposed to capital punishment and opposed to military interventionism abroad, and good on some of these critical issues. I can overlook the bad economics, that they embrace. For example, I've said this before. I have deep, deep respect for former Congressman Ron Paul. He's got some flaws, obviously, from my perspective, and he may think I'm a douchebag for being a socialist. I don't care. However, I do respect Ron Paul, and just I think he's a good ally because on some very important critical issues, he's been on the moral side of the question. When it comes to non-interventionism, the drug war, certain matters pertaining to civil liberties, and he's now officially opposed to capital punishment. So I don't have a problem considering Ron Paul an ally, considering that during the Bush years, he's worked with people like Congressman Dennis Kucinich of Ohio and Congressman Bernie Sanders of Vermont when he was in the U.S. House of Representatives. So anyway, but I want to tell you, well, basically, this is what I'm going to say to you. My biggest reason as to why I can never be a Republican can be summed up in two words: Jesse Helms. And the late Jesse Helms is the reason, because when Jesse Helms came along, the Republican Party was no longer the party of Abraham Lincoln and Dwight Eisenhower. Right now, today, in the year 2020, the Republican Party now is the Republican Party of Sarah Palin and the late Jesse Helms. And that's my contention, my issue of contention right there. The Southern strategy, and I've had a conservative friend online who's an okay person, but he basically said, I don't know what I'm talking about when it came to the Southern strategy. That there's no such a thing as the Southern strategy, and that the Democrats did not become Republicans because of the race issue. But how in the hell can you say that? Yeah, I don't think that maybe that every Republican that created their Southern strategy was doing it because they absolutely hated black people, but they took advantage of racial animosity by Jim Crow Democrats in the South and made voting Republican an attractive option for them. That can't be denied, and that's exactly why that I don't support the Republican Party. And even when they were Democrats, it was a blemish on the Democratic Party too that there were people like that in the Democratic Party. I don't care whether they're Jim Crow Democrats or they're Tea Party Republicans. I don't care. These people are awful. They are awful. And so, yeah, and in some ways, I would say that today's Republicans who are former Dixiecrats are worse than they were when they were actually Jim Crow Democrats in one sense. Because at least with the majority of the Jim Crow Democrats, as bad as they were for being Jim Crow Democrats, they did adhere and believe in a very vague way that New Deal consensus of FDR when it came to economics. Once they went into the Republican Party, that mindset went away, and they started embracing this Robert Taft style economics in the Republican Party. Now, Robert Taft, he was a congressman from Ohio. Well, I'm going to tell you about Robert Taft, the son of William Howard Taft. Robert Taft was not a bad man. I mean, I despise what he did with the Taft-Hartley Act of 1947, which created right to work laws. But on issues pertaining to race and civil liberties, he was relatively progressive. And he written civil rights bills in Congress for racial equality. And because of that, I'm not going to go and shit too much on Robert Taft. Um, but Jesse Helms, as a Democrat, around that same time, after he's a World War II veteran, but Jesse Helms, after the war, in 1950, he worked in the Democratic primaries to unseat Franklin Porter Graham, who was a Democratic senator at that time. Franklin Porter Graham was a relatively pro New Deal Democrat that favored racial equality by Southern standards. And that was bad enough for people like Jesse Helms, who was a Democrat and a segregationist. So Willis Smith unseated or defeated Frank Porter Graham in the Democratic primary, and was able to become the Democratic senator that replaced Franklin Porter Graham, and he died in 1953. But that was the beginning of Jesse Helms's political career right there. And during the 1950s, as a Democrat, Jesse Helms was the chair of the North Carolina Bankers Association. He was a member of the Raleigh City Council, where he was again as a Jim Crow Democrat, a very right wing across the board, with politics that kind of mimicked that of the John Birch Society. Did Jesse Helms ever join the John Birch Society? So far as I know, I don't think he has, but I know he probably had warm fuzzies toward them. In 1960, Jesse Helms worked on the segregationist campaign of Beverly Lake for governor of North Carolina. So anybody who gets mad at me when I said Jesse Helms and accuse him of racism, they're 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 wrong if they think Jesse Helms wasn't. Jesse Helms was a open supporter of segregation during the 50s and 60s, and it continued on to the day he died. I mean, right up into the early 80s when he was fighting against making Martin Luther King Day a national holiday. Um, Jesse Helms basically, he referred to UNC Chapel Hill, University of North Carolina Chapel Hill, as the University of Negroes and Communists. So this was the mindset of Jesse Helms, and even as he became a U.S. senator, he was, and this was a different time. Even on foreign policy, he was actually the biggest vocal critic of Israel in the 1970s, at a time when Israel was, although it was a declining movement, but the labor Zionist or the socialist Zionist movement was still a mainstream ideology when it came to the politics relating to Israel. As the religious right came of age in the 1980s, Jesse Helms moved from being anti-Israel to being pro-Israel at a time when Israel was moving away from the left, and it became a turned solidly right wing and all of that. And so Jesse Helms opposed Israel at one time for the wrong reasons. Then he became a supporter of Israel later on for the wrong reasons. And anyway, that's Jesse Helms in a nutshell. And Jesse Helms, as I said, he he made his crusade against equality for gays, lesbians, bisexual, transgender, queer people. That was what he was known for. And he was pretty much a protege of the religious right, an avatar of the religious right in many, many, many ways. And he used racism in 1990 to defeat Harvey Gantt, who would have been the first black senator from the state of North Carolina. A good man that I was proud to support in 1990 and 1996, Harvey Gantt. If you ever get a chance to find out about Harvey Gantt, please do so. He was the former mayor of Charlotte. He was an architect, and he ran as a pretty good progressive Democrat by Southern standards. But anyway, going back to the 1960s, Jesse Helms was a segregationist that got a job at WRAL Channel 5. And he, every night on TV in the late 60s through the early 70s, he would do these commentaries on Channel 5 about basically the Negro problem, as he was trying to painted out to be, and the communist problem and the hippies and and the law and order and fight against communism, the whole 9 yards. He was just obnoxious, and he was still a Democrat in the late '60s, but in 1970 he became a Republican. Now, now, those Republicans who get upset and triggered when I say Southern strategy, do you expect me to believe that he was racist as a Democrat, and then when he became a Republican, he was pro-black? Please, I got beach property in Utah. If you gonna believe that, honestly, beach property in Nebraska. Yeah, really. I got some. Oh, I, I got news for you. Jesse Helms never changed, and he ran in 1972 for the U.S. Senate under the coattails of Richard Nixon's massive victory. And he campaigned on law and order against communism and against busing, which the crusade against busing back then was basically segregation, you know. And he always found a hot button issue to exploit when he was politically vulnerable. In 1978, he utilized the issue of the Panama Canal Treaty. In 1984, what did he do? I think it was Martin Luther King. In 1990, it was affirmative action. The commercial where white hands were balling up a job application, um, and basically, which really meant that Jesse Helms would like to deprive minorities of jobs, not into identity politics, but you got to call spade a spade, and Jesse Helms was definitely was a racist, and he was exploiting that as a race issue. Um, in 1996, it was gay marriage. I mean, it was just he always exploited it, and he was a down the line asshole when it came to what the Republicans were doing. Kyle Kalinske talks about the term movement conservatism, and Jesse Helms was kind of the embodiment yesteryear of movement conservatism. And today's successor to Jesse Helms is Ted Cruz. And the difference between Ted Cruz and Jesse Helms, I would say, if I have to say there's a difference, and I don't know Ted Cruz personally, not that I want to, but I would say maybe the difference between Ted Cruz and Jesse Helms is he might not be racist. That might be the difference. But other than that, Jesse Helms and Ted Cruz, pretty much that was his influence. And he once made a comment about how nice it would be if there were 100 people like Jesse Helms in the U.S. Senate. And Jesse Helms was his hero when he was growing up. One more reason why Ted Cruz never needs to become president, by the way. Um, and during the times Jesse Helms was a chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, there was not a right wing government that were committing human right abuses that Jesse Helms was not critical of. I mean, if they were right wing and they were committing human right abuses, Jesse Helms was very much in favor of that. So just as I said, Jesse Helms was an awful person, and Jesse Helms defines the modern Republican Party. Is basically what I'm trying to say. I don't mean every Republican, because not every Democrat is like Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. Which, if the Democratic Party was filled with more AOCs and a whole lot less Nancy Pelosi's, it would be such a better party. But you know what's so funny about that is I look at Nancy Pelosi as too conservative, while the average Republican look at Nancy Pelosi and they think of Che Guevara or something. But so anyway, that's basically my main point is that Jesse Helms is the face of the Republican Party. 12 years, 12 and a half years after his death. I'm sorry that anybody dies on a personal level, but I wish that Jesse Helms would have been alive just long enough, just several months long enough, make it into 2009 to see Obama getting sworn in. I would love to see Jesse Helms get triggered over the fact that Obama became the first black president this country ever had. No fan of Obama, but and it has more to do with policy than anything else. But that's basically what I have to say about that. So now you know. You need to know why I have animosity institutionally toward the modern Republican Party. Sum it up in 2 words: Jesse Helms. Oh, there are other reasons too. I could go into other reasons, but I have to say, for my money, you want me to name the number one reason why I oppose Republicans? Jesse Helms is it. And what's so sad is that I need to slim down because I look like a 1960s, early 1970s era Jesse Helms right now with the gray hair and the glasses and I'm kind of I'm a little chubbier than I like to be at this point, but I'm working on it. But suffice to say, that's what I got to say about that. If you like what you heard, press like and comment. If you were triggered, um, comment anyway. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to let you know that if you're passionate about something and you want a platform, or if you have a platform, develop it and utilize it because we are the muckrakers of our time. Like, comment any ways you don't like. So, share the content of this channel. Uh, and most importantly, subscribe. I am American, social democracy. And until next time, Bernie Sanders for president in the year 2024. Peace.